Well, again, thanks for inviting me, and just like to congratulate the Occupy movement, because undoubtedly, like people were saying this morning, it inspired many people raising the ideas. You might not feel you've won the battle yet, but certainly in terms of raising all sorts of questions, which goes to the very heart of the system, in the undemocratic ways, unfair ways, you've done a fantastic job, and hopefully whatever we can do in UCU to support your campaign in the future, please don't hesitate to ask us. Second, I'd just like to say solidarity greetings from the National Executive of UCU. We are affiliated to the campaign and proud to be so. And to really, the last Further Education Committee, which I'm the Vice Chair of, we passed a motion which got our General Secretary to write a piece in the website congratulating this organisation and the others who participated and around the question of workfare and what they did around workfare and how it inspired us all. So that also I'd like to say that in terms from UCU, thank you very much. You absolutely inspired us. Somebody said this morning, any victory, every victory is so important because an idea shows a little idea exactly how weak really these people are. They look very tough, they look very fierce, they look very knowing what they're doing, but as soon as you see multinational companies, one by one, running away from all the demonstrators standing outside their workplaces, campaigning the way they did, is certainly something which inspires us all and tells us what the potential could be and will be if we organise effectively in the way that you have shown us. So once again, thank you for that. What I've asked to do is something around jobs and education. This is a pamphlet the Chair mentioned. This is up the back, they can get it for free. Jobs and Education, Regaining the Trust of Young People, which myself and others wrote just after the aftermath of the riots last year, or the uprisings, perhaps more of a better term to use, last in August. And we thought that in UCU really it's our role to not only defend and protect those young people, but also to try to put forward an alternative to the mass unemployment and an argument for real jobs in the way in which we've heard this morning from the Climate Campaign organisation. So I just want to say something about youth unemployment, because we talk about 1 million. The scandal of 1 million people unemployed, between 16 and 25-year-olds unemployed. And yesterday's headline, The Guardian, and another statistic, again briefly mentioned this morning, and that was about black youth. Since the recession, has gone from 28% since the recession hit in 2008, amongst 16 and 24-year-old black youth, to over 50% of black youth today. You know, that is a staggering figure. And anybody's count here. So when we talk about mass unemployment, we also talk about racism, institutionalised racism, going right to the heart of the system. This is what these figures they see, and they wonder why people then decide that they feel no future. They end up doing the things they do around their own inner cities. We've seen this before, of course, in the early 1980s. And you talk to anybody from Tottenham at this moment in time, they say it's not over. You know, this idea, that's it, it's done. You know. Watch this space is quite likely, if they don't resolve these issues over the question of the EMA, over the question of mass unemployment, then again, of course, what do you expect to happen will be happen again, no doubt. And it's twice that of white people. I don't think white people are obviously unemployed, but the figures is twice that of white people. So one of the first things I want to say really is about youth unemployment. It is institutionalised. And I say this is an obvious point, but it's actually developed quite significantly over the last 30 years. You know, if you look today, for example, where today only a minority of 16 to 25-year-olds are in the workforce, only minority. But if you go back from the late 1940s right way to the late 1960s, this wasn't the case. In fact, the unemployment rates amongst young people were lower than those in the working population as a whole. That tells you what's going on here. And it really stood in the mid-1970s. There's a really. You saw the crisis starting to occur in the late 60s, early 1970s, and you saw the impact of mass unemployment raising head by 1976. You had a Labour government in office at the time, of course, led by a man called I forgot his name now, Callaghan, and Wilson then was Callaghan, and he organised something called the Great Education Debate at the time. And some of the times it wasn't great, and it wasn't much about education, and it wasn't much of a debate either. But nevertheless, it had a quite profound impact on the direction of where education was going to go and the arguments why mass unemployment took place. Because before that, most people, somewhere, if you're unemployed, you did understand it because the factory closed down. That the system had something to do with unemployment. But when they started to recognise, as the system entered a period of long, sustained economic crisis, then the question of mass unemployment was going to remain for a long, long time. And therefore, how do you convince people it's okay? You can't just blame the system, because then people might say, well, it's the system we've got to change it. So what he's talked about in his great speech, the great debate, was that he attacked teachers first of all, because we're all the easy target. He talked about the anti-industrial bias within the classroom. All these trendy 60s ideas, fashionable ideas, who really people don't, hate, education for jobs and this kind of thing. They hate that, and all these trendy teaching methods, all of that kind of thing was to blame. That's number one. So teachers were to blame for not teaching the right kinds of skills for young people. Then, of course, parents. But the next one came up, parents are to blame. Then you hit their kids hard enough to discipline them, whatever sort of nonsense. You still hear this today as well. And, of course, finally, is young people as well. Then the final target to blame for why they can't get jobs, of course, young people themselves. Young people just don't care, they've got bad habits, bad manners, don't wash, wear strange clothing, all the sorts of usual demonisation which go with being young and so on and so forth. So you saw a marked attempt, conscious shift in the way that the narrative, if you like, to understand why mass unemployment came about was not to do with the system itself, but was to do with individuals, their families, or the teachers which actually teach them. And that, of course, has been developed very strongly ever since. Throughout the 1980s, and this is really come to common sense, has it not, of what most people, government seem to think of where mass unemployment comes about today. And I think we have to really just make some obvious points here. Unemployment is not the problem of young people. It's not their attitudes. It's not the problem of people like me don't teach them the right skills. It isn't the problem because the parents don't beat their kids hard enough and give them disciplines or whatever it might be. It's all to do with people who start from the need for profit. And the need to say, well, actually, young people are not the issue here. The most important thing is the bottom line, how much profit I can make, and that's it. And that's the starting point. But the role of unemployment, I think, is important. We've had a discussion today. I'm talking about the relationship between mass unemployment and the organised working class, i.e. people in employment. There's an obvious, and why, and I very much want to reinforce the point, why it's so important that those of us in work must take up the question of unemployment as much, if not more so, than those who actually are unemployed. One, it's easier for us because we are employed, but why? Because what is the role of unemployment under this present system? It is obviously to demoralise those who are unemployed, but more importantly, is to discipline those who are in work. That is the whole role of unemployment under the present system. It is to say to you, if you're in work, if you want a higher wage, very nice idea. Don't fight for it because there's a queue outside the door. You shut up, there's a wage freeze, be quiet. If you want a better conditions of service, you want to up and fight for a better life, a more work-life balance, don't dare do it because that's at least you've got a job. That disciplining role of mass unemployment on the organised working class, or those in work, is the key reason why unemployment takes place. And that seems to be an obvious link why we who are in work should take up these kinds of issues very strongly indeed. So, what do we do about it? I think that's the key issue here. Now, clearly, the mass demonstrations and so on are crucial to this. The fact that we, hopefully, and I was talking to a colleague from the NUT this morning, it looks very likely that, and from the PCS for that matter, that on Wednesday, Thursday, and on Monday this week, the National Executive will be meeting and will be reaffirming that the 28th of March will be a strike action involving 800,000 people taking strike action. That is what we do. But that strike action, let's be clear about this strike action. When I and others took strike action on that day, I had people come to me and said, do you know, I don't have a pension, I'm in further education. A lot of people say this, particularly a lot of young lecturers. But we're on strike because of what happened what took place in August. What took place by young people. People, this idea that something was just about pensions, it clearly was far, far more about that. People, so when we strike on the 28th of March, it is for every single young unemployed person. It is for all those people who can't get a job and we want to get a job. And so it seems to me is linking that campaign of how you take on mass unemployment with the arguments I'm trying to describe within the movement itself, within the strike campaign. But we have to go further than that. You see, for some time, us in the Right to Work have tried to put across the idea, and I know the excellent book which Owen has written, is really trying to put an alternative to the status quo, the alternative. Now, I think this is increasingly becoming very important for us. You see, it's not a luxury anymore. That was a nice thing to talk about, alternative. I would argue it's a necessity if we're going to get movements off the ground, let alone finding an argument how we take on the system. And in a small way, we've tried to add to that a contribution in there around the whole question of jobs and education. And we're simply saying a couple of things, and I'm not going to go through it all. Hopefully people have got time to have a read of it. But the first thing, it seems to me, we have to do is disentangle the issue of jobs and education. That's the first stop. Because you see, what clearly has happened over the last 30 years is come synonymous. That is, education has become employer-driven. that everything has to be about a job. Now, increasingly, what young people are asking is obviously a question, well, what's the point of having these jobs, which are or training or education, it's all about skills, for non-existing jobs? What is the point? So young people don't see a point of this, so we have to say to us, actually, also, it doesn't prepare our young people very well. General education does. You know, history, sciences, anything, humanities, anything which is beyond simply that of directly relating to employment is as good, if not better, than simply relating education around a job. So disconnecting simply education being a matter about jobs and about economic questions and not more and more general education. I think we have a more generalised education. It creates a much more rounded individual, a more creative individual who can think critically for themselves and thus find themselves more easily be able to navigate their way around all the difficult social, political and economic problems which actually confronts them. That's for us the starting point, it seems to me. The second thing, though, of course, is arguing about real jobs, not ones which are somehow the MAC jobs, the workfare jobs, real jobs. When I hear that idiot Tory calling colleagues over here job snobs, you know, how dare he call us job snobs? People like this, 2 minutes good, talk about job snobs. You know, these are the people who wouldn't dream of getting out of bed for no wages, let alone let their children go to work for no wages. And but for our kids, it's absolutely fine, no problem at all. And we're the job snobs. And we have to say to these people, absolutely not. If a job snobs mean I want a decent education and I want a decent real job that pays decent money, then absolutely a job snob. What's good enough for your kids is absolutely good enough for our kids. It's as simple as that. And therefore, to finish up on is to say this. I mean, we need to carry some basic demands. I mean, again, there's many of them. But I think, first of all, 1 million climate jobs, the campaign, I think we need to make much more of this than we are at this moment in time. We need to integrate in every avenue of our work. The sustainability agenda, the whole question of lagging, the skills which will come from that, which we could connect very easily into further education. Very, very important work we can do. And could be doable in the here and now. Not in 10, 20 years down, in the here and now, could resolve that and get 1 million jobs organised just like this. And they're the things we have to put forward. These aren't pie-in-the-sky ideas. These are an expansion of quality apprenticeships. Not these Mickey Mouse, real jobs, real apprenticeships. Employers to be given statutory rights to paid educational leave and to workforce training. So we force the employers to do these things rather than just leaving them to believe, well, if you want to get training, that's up to you. No, we should force these employers and fine them if they don't give proper training for young people in these situations. So they're just some ideas. There's plenty more we can do. So an alternative, it seems to me, is not a luxury, it's a necessity. So I'd like to finish here by, once again, thank you for inviting me here. I do believe, actually, I'm very confident that the kinds of ideas and the brilliant debate and discussion showing the kinds of things people are doing around the country, well, we hopefully all that will come together once again, ratchet up on the 28th, and we can continue to put, not only to beat these people and bring them down, but more importantly, or as importantly, to put forward a real democratic change to our society. Thanks a lot.